Enforcer 2249, Callistine. Report on the perimeter security. Enforcer, I demand a response. Steinham report. Is the perimeter secure? Enforcer!
All groovy, sir.
Hi and welcome to TMCB Studios. I'm Paul and today we're looking at making chain link fences. The build today is for modular fences, but it's pretty much the same method for static inbuilt fences too. For materials we had some 5mm and 4mm T styrene rods, some insect grating and some 0.5mm brass wire. Using good old Callistine, we measured up to make sure that it would actually be roughly the right size so that it would be comparative to be able to play with. Then onto the good old trusty mighty knife, but in this case didn't seem that mighty. We cut 3 strips from the 5mm styrene rod. Gave them a little bit of a clean up as well to make sure there'd be a nice smooth finish. With the edges tied up, we then cut a nice angle into each one, which would then correspond with the next part, which would glue to it to give the top part of the chain link fence where the barbed wire would a little bit more cleaning, and then copy the same thing across the other 2 as well. Probably could have done with a sharper knife at this point. Here we are, so now we're cutting the same angle into a new piece of the 5mm styrene, cutting this down to the size that we need to be where the barbed wire can sit. Three of these cut out, then each one clearly marked, 3 dots on each one, and then copying through to make sure they're all the same height. And using a little bit of, I think it was a piece of balsa just to ensure that it was easy to drill. Using a pin drill, drilled each of those holes out on each of the 3. A little bit of a clean up. And then they're ready to go. So a little bit of a sand as well on both sides, just to make sure that we have that really nice clean edge so that the glue will stick better. Stick better, he said, and then proves it wrong. Good job we've got some accelerating spray here. With all 3 ready, it's then a case of once again putting them up against wonderful Callistine again to make sure that we get a good scale for how wide we need these to be. And that's the great thing about having one of these cutting boards, is we can use the grid on there as well to get a good idea where the size is. Back to cutting these again, 4 of them, so we can create the upper and bottom stanchions. Glued on. And once again, this is where the grid comes in really good. You can really get a good eyeball sense of where things need to be in there. A little bit of accelerator, a bit more super glue, and the next one's on as well. Just keeps it very nicely in line with where you need it to be. And the same again. Don't really need me telling you that, but you can see it. And of course, can't beat that little bit of accelerant. Speeds things up so much. And there you go, that's the main structure. Now we need to put the actual chain link itself in it. What we use for this is insect mesh that you can get, I think we got this from Amazon actually, but this is used to cover doors, windows, etc. But it's got a certain level of rigidity to it, so it doesn't just bend and flop all over the place, but it's also got a really good size gap between the actual links. Super glue, a modular's best friend, it would appear. We did it halfway here so that you'd be able to peel back and do it so the super glue wouldn't cure. Press it all down, accelerate again. Gotta love that stuff. And there you go. That's pretty much a chain link fence. Now this is where, as we're making this modular, usually we just stick this straight into the actual build that we were doing. But for this, to make it modular, we got a penny for each stanchion, glued each one down. I think this had copious amounts of super glue and accelerant on it. and then we're onto the barbed wire. So for this it was the 0.5mm brass wire, pull straight out. Probably seen this trick many times again, but it is really good. Fasten it into an electric drill. Fasten it to something, I think for this actually I held it with just a piece of doweling, and then turn it on until you get a really nice tight curl in it, which gives the impression of barbed wire. Those holes that we drilled earlier now come fully into use as we thread it through, all the way through until it just pokes through the last one. Super glue again, quite a bit on this, we want it all there. Accelerant again, marvellous. Once it's dry, you pull it a little bit tight to make sure that it keeps it nice and straight, and do the end. Accelerant, it's a winner. Once that's done and dried, case of cutting it off, and then basically doing the same for the other two. You do make sure that the actual wire is as straight as possible. You don't want to pull anything out of shape, but it should be straight. Now onto the bases. So we use some sculptor mold on this, just to give it a little bit more definition to it and to hide the coins as well. So a little bit of sculptor mold onto each. Not too big, as we want these to be modular, so we do want things to stand next to them, so it's very much taken into consideration that the end pieces shouldn't be too high and we shouldn't have too much around it, so you see a lot of the scraping various bits off here. Once it's dry, that's it. Chuck some lovely bit of glue on there. I think it was some tacky glue we put on this one, and then cover it in our scatter mixture. Let it dry. Once it's dry, a good spray with IPA, and then with a little bit of watered down Mod Podge on each one as well. And this just makes sure that everything that's on there is going to stay on there and not fall off in the middle of the game. We skipped a bit of base coating because, well, it's base coating. So for this, we used the Vallejo metal colour burnt iron for the metal areas, and then Vallejo mud brown for the bases. We then used the good old Null Oil and Agrax Earth Shade. Usually we make our own for this, just for the sheer size, but as it's a small piece, it's just easy to do it with the pots. So a little bit of splashing on each of theirs. This is the part where, trying to speed things up, I used a hairdryer. I also then made my entire mat bend and fold. So books on top of it while it's still warm, and it does flatten back out, but don't make the mistake I did there. Onto dry brushing, we've got some mud brown, we've got some desert sand as well, and it's just a slow build up of getting lighter and lighter on those bases. There we go for that. And then a little bit of dirty down rust. This was probably the first time I'd used it on this. I'd seen others use it. Keep it warm, give it a good shake, and then make sure you take it out of the bottle because you don't want any moisture getting into the bottle. And then it's just a case of putting it on quite thickly where you feel that the most rust would be. Once you've got that on, you can also then water it down a little bit, and once again this is why we're outside of the pot and on a mixing palette, and go over the top, and this will then get gradually lighter and give a really nice effect of the dark older browns of rust all the way through up to a nice orangey fresh rust as well. As you can see, there's a little bit of water putting on it and just adding to certain areas, not going over the top. We did feel that as it was so rusty, there probably would be a hole in this one, so it was very much a case of just got it with a scalpel, so it's just push parts back, and then a little bit of extra rust on top. This was then when we got to putting some grasses in there, although it might be the grim dark. We did feel that it looked a little bit boring without any foliage on there, so these are just, I think, the Woodland Scenics, long strands, and you can basically cut them down to size. So a little bit of tacky glue, a sprig of them, and then just slowly pull them out to make sure they're not just sat in one clump. And this was basically done all the way around. These are a little overlong, but I do trim them back in a minute to give a little bit more realism to them. A couple of clumps of grass here, some small and then some slightly larger, just to get a little bit of variation and a different bit of colour. Then we got some other little plants, and we got these from a great place called Diorama Precipe, and they're lovely little kind of cotton tops, catkins, and they just give an extra little level to it. So there you can see, just trimming away top to give it a more realistic look. This is where I did make another one at the same time with only one end on it, and we put magnets in there so they do link together, and that's another area you can do to make sure they can be as modular as you want. Didn't go into showing you how that was done for the simple fact it's exactly the same but with magnets down one side. And here they are. There, perfectly together. A marine that decided to throw itself on the floor. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Just helps us move further forward and hopefully get more videos out. Thanks again, and see you next time.